Greetings, friends. I welcome you to my YouTube channel where we learn, revise, and share ideas on mathematics just to make the subject easier. I'm kindly asking you to subscribe if you have not subscribed so that you keep on receiving new lessons every time I share with you. Thank you very much. Today, we are going to look at quadratic equations. There are a number of methods that we use to solve quadratic equations, but for the purpose of this lesson, I'm just going to focus on one method called factorization. Thank you. Now, the form of a quadratic equation is written like this: ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0, where a, b, and c are constants. Now, a quadratic equation should never be raised to any index above a 2 or below a 2. What I'm trying to say, what qualifies this equation to be called quadratic equation, it is because the leading index there is a 2. If it is not a 2, it ceases to be a quadratic equation. Now, why are we saying the value of a should never be equals to 0? The reason is very simple, following what I've just said. If, for instance, a is 0, it means that 0 here for the a multiplied by x here, you are going to have a 0, meaning this will disappear. Remember, any number that you multiply by a 0, the answer that you get, the product that you get is a 0. 0 means this will not be here. It means, therefore, that this will cease to be a quadratic equation. Instead, it's going to be called a linear equation. That is why I'm emphasizing to say a should not be equals to 0. Now, I said there are several methods which we use to solve quadratic equations, and I'm using factorization method. Now, there are also types of quadratic equations. In this lesson, I'm going to discuss 3 of them. And the first one, types, remember, mark my words, I'm saying 3 types that I will discuss with you of quadratic equations. I'm not saying methods, types. The first one is called quadratic monomial. Quadratic monomial. Quadratic monomial, it means it's a type of quadratic equation that has only one term equals to 0. It is coming from this word monomial. So you have a quadratic equation like this: ax squared equals to 0. This means either a or x is going to be a 0. So a can be a 0 or x itself can be a 0. Why? Because any number that you multiply by a 0, the product that you get, the answer that you get, is always a 0. So this is it. Number 2 type of a quadratic equation is called quadratic binomial. Quadratic binomial. So a quadratic binomial is a quadratic equation that has only 2 terms equals to 0. So, for instance, ax squared plus b x to give you or to give us a 0. This is in the form of questions like 2x plus 8x squared equals to 0. Or it can be a question like 5x squared minus 15x equals to 0. Provided the leading coefficient is a 2. It means it qualifies to be a quadratic equation. The third type of a quadratic equation is called quadratic trinomial. Quadratic trinomial. Okay, so this quadratic trinomial, we are very familiar with it because it carries the form of the standard equation or general equation of a quadratic equation. So in this case, you are going to have a x squared, okay, plus b x plus c equals to 0. So these are the three that I will discuss today in this lesson. I'm saying the first one is a quadratic monomial, where there is only one term equals to 0. The second one is quadratic binomial. Bi means 2, where there are only 2 terms equals to 0. And the third one is quadratic trinomial, where there are 3 terms equals to 0. Remember, I said what qualifies a particular equation to be called quadratic equation is because of the leading coefficient is the leading index there is always a 2. It is raised the highest power, the highest index there, the highest degree is a 2. So it qualifies that particular equation to be called quadratic equation. So quickly, let me take you through on some examples. The first one, quadratic monomial. You can have an equation like this. Let's say 2x squared equals to 0. If you have an equation like this, it means you have to, there is no any value apart from 0 after equal sign here. So you divide both sides by the coefficient, which will be a 2 and over 2 here. So the value is always a 0 in this case. So I'm not spending a lot of time on this, but my main focus is on these two, the second one and the third one. So I will discuss these two, the last two, quadratic binomial and also quadratic trinomial. All right, so you have questions, different questions. Remember, I said I would discuss the last two. You have questions like this one. Find the value of this. What you are supposed to do here, you standardize this one by making sure the equation is equals to 0 by bringing this the other side. And how do you bring the 10x to this side? You use additive inverse. Some teachers or some of us, and I've said this again somewhere myself, for this number to come this side, the sign is going to change. So first, you start with what you already have. The additive inverse of 10x is negative 10x equals to 0. So here you are supposed to factorize. So what is common here? We have a 2. A 2 is common, and also an x is common. Open bracket, x here, minus 5. For you to be sure of what you are doing is correct, at this point, just multiply, expand this by 2x multiplied by an x here, you must get this. And 2x here multiplied by a negative 5, you must get a negative 10x. So in this case, it's correct. At this point, these two factors, what you are supposed to do, you split them. So this 2x will be equals to 0, or what is in the brackets here also equals to 0. So we have x minus 5 equals to 0. So of course you divide both sides by the coefficient. In this case, you divide both sides by a 2. So you have x equals to 0. Or x minus 5 equals to 0. Your answer definitely here, the additive inverse of negative 5 will be a positive 5. So these are the two values of x if you are to solve this quadratic equation. What you must not do when solving an equation like this one is this: 2x squared equals to 10x. Remember, it looks very simple but dangerous and tempting. If you are panicking, because every time you are given an exam, there is a specific duration for that paper, so you may end up panicking doing this, because this is what is common. Okay? Then you cancel this, you also cancel that, then you cancel an x there, you cancel this, 2 into 2, 1, 2 into 10, it's 5, then x here and cancels with that other x. So you will say x now equals to 5. 5 is just one of the values of x. This is not in full. So never should you do this. Follow this method for you to have full answers or full values of x. Let's assume you have 3 marks for this question. It means you get 1 mark here, another mark there, and another mark for the method. 3 in total. If it is 3 marks, then you go by this method I'm discouraging you. It means you may just end up having 1 mark. The reason is the method is not well followed and the second answer is not there. So never should you divide like this. Remember, we are focusing on the factorization method. Let's go to the other one. We quickly go to the other type of quadratic equation that we are very familiar with. The other one is called quadratic trinomial. We are very familiar. Let's take, for instance, we are to solve this quadratic equation. A question like this one, first thing, standardize. What do I mean by saying standardize? Make sure the equation is equals to 0. This is factorization method. So what we'll do is 5x squared plus x. This will come this side, the additive inverse. So we're going to have negative 4 equals to, here we remain with a 0. At this point, find the product and the sum. You get the coefficient of the leading index there, which is an A, following this general formula of the quadratic equation. So you multiply this by the constant here. So it means the product is a negative 20. And how do you get the sum? Sum, it means two numbers that you have added, now the answer. So in this case, we get the number that is in front of the variable that is raised to power 1. Let me say you get the coefficient of the variable of the x that is raised to power 1. In this case, the x is power 1, but we don't just write it there. So what number is there? It's not a 0, there is 1. So you indicate a 1 there. Now, we need to get two factors that when we multiply, we get a negative 20, and the same factors when we add, we must get a positive 1 here. So, possible values for the product. You can multiply negative 20 by positive 1. You can also multiply, you just switch the signs here, 20 by negative 1, you can still get a negative 20. The other one, you can multiply negative 10 by positive 2, you can still get a negative 20. The other one, you multiply a 10 by negative 2, you can still get a negative 20. The other one, you can multiply negative 5 by positive 4, you can still get a negative 20. And the last one, you can multiply positive 5 by negative 4. You can still get a negative 20. Out of these pairs of numbers that you are multiplying to get the product negative 20, which two numbers, which set gives you a 1 when you add those two numbers? So you look at this. The first one, when you add negative 20 plus, or if you want, you can simply do this. Okay? Just put signs there. Just put signs. So you can just do this. Okay? To make your work easier. So here, there's one sign. This doesn't give me 1. Here, positive times negative, you are going to get a negative. It doesn't give me 1. Here, it doesn't give me 1. There, negative times positive or positive times negative, I'll get a negative. It doesn't give me 1. Negative 5 plus 4, it doesn't give me 1. Positive times negative, you have a negative here. So this minus this, it gives me 1. Therefore, it means the factors that you multiply, the factors that you multiply for you to get negative 20, it's positive 5 and negative 4. The same factors, when you add, you must get a 1, which is very true. Positive 5 and negative 4, you get a 1. Now, what you do is you go back to this, the coefficient of the highest power there, the variable of the highest power, which is the value of A. You do this as simple as it is. You can use the method you are very familiar with when it comes to finding the answers now. So here, you just drop 1 from the 2. It means you are going to have 5x and you also write on this one 5x. Okay? What are those two factors? Positive 5 and the negative 4, like this. At this point, make sure you divide within the bracket the coefficient of x or whatever variable is there. So I divide both sides by whatever number is there within the bracket on both. So here I'm going to have x plus 1. This and that. This and that. Again, here you do the same thing. What is the coefficient there? It is 5. So you divide both sides by 5. This and that. It means you're going to have x minus 4 over 5. You close, equals to 0. At this point, let me use this space. At this point, you split these two. The first one will be x plus 1 equals to 0, which is x equals to negative 1, if you are to solve this. The second one is x minus 4 over 5 equals to 0. Additive inverse of this will be x equals to positive 4 over 5. The final answers for this quadratic equation, you are going to have something like this. X equals to negative 1 or 4 over 5. Others 4 over 5, they would love to present their answers as a decimal number, which is also the same as 4 into this, it's 0.4 into 5 into 4, it's 0, then 0.5 into 40, you get 8. So these are the answers. Thank you very much for being with me and for spending your time to watch through and see how it may help you. Always remember to subscribe and also share this video. God bless you. Thank you very much.